Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be when to give her more of your time and attention and when to back off. Well, this particular email is from a viewer. He says he's confused on when to move forward, when to move back, and he brings up something from page 154 in 3% Man about what to do and how to respond when women start initiating contact after dates. So he's worried about over pursuing. So let's see what his concern is so we can address it. He says, "Hey Corey, first of all, thanks for all of your information. You have truly changed my dating life for the better. I have just one question. You say after the second or third date, she will usually contact you in between dates, and you should use that as an opportunity to set the next date. Therefore, the frequency of seeing each other goes up by her reaching out to you. But on page 154 of your book, you say that no matter what, not to see her more than once a week in the first 60 days. That's not what I actually said in the book. He quotes from the book. I believe he's quoted properly. But when you look at the quote and what he's saying the quote says, it's the opposite of it. So the idea is that as men, we want to take measured steps when we're dating and courting women. Way too many guys, I would say the majority of men, or 97% of the dudes out there, call too much, text too much, communicate their interests too much. They come off as needy, smothering. They're often trying to lock a girl down to a commitment. And so what you have to understand is, like, for us guys, we tend to be visual. We see a girl like, that's the one I want. But with women, it's less so. Women have more of the attitude of, do I like this guy? Is he good for me? Let's see how it goes. And it takes time for women to fall in love. And it takes time for them to fall out of love. And so them falling in love is a process. And so it's a scientific fact that women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. And so what you're trying to do, and what the book is explaining, is you're trying to go slightly slower in the courtship than she is. Because what happens is, over the first several weeks, usually, because most women are going to sleep with a guy by the second or third date, and usually after you become intimate like that, within a couple of days of your last date, she's going to text you, she's going to call you, she's going to FaceTime you or whatever. And then you just assume, like the book says, if she's reaching out to you, it's probably because she wants to see you and make the next date. Now, most of the time, women are going to call you or text you a few days later and go, hey, that last date went so well, I want you to take me out again. They almost never say that. Usually they just reach out and they're like, hey, or they send you a meme, or they just call you to see how you're doing or what you're up to. But they're not going to ask you out because we're supposed to pursue. But what women do when they like us is they reach out and get in contact and present themselves on a platter, in essence, and basically say, you should know what to do. Ask me on a date, make a date, create an opportunity for sex to happen. And so you're supposed to understand what that means. And so, as the book says, you're going to take measured steps. You are only going to reach out once per week to set a date. And then what happens is 2 to 3 weeks in, typically, they reach out, or they start reaching out, within 2 to 3 days or 1 to 3 days of your previous date. And when that starts to happen, then you can actually back off in your pursuit. Because if you think about it from this perspective, say for the first 2 weeks, you reach out, you set a date, you go out, you hang out, you have fun, you hook up. Maybe you just kissed a little bit on the first date, heavy petting, you send her on your way or her way, and then the next week you reach out and then you make a date, things progress a lot further, and then maybe you hook up on the second date. And then what you're going to notice is your intention is, like the book says, is to wait until the following week to reach out once and then make one more date. So it's just one date per week that's initiated by you is what you're going to do. And then as her interest goes up and then she starts reaching out to you, then you can just use that as an opportunity to set the next date. And what happens is you get 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, and then the girl's reaching out every couple of days, sometimes every day or every other day. And then when that's starting to happen, it's actually counterproductive for you to continue reaching out once per week. Because if you were only reaching out once per week and making one date per week, and then you go out, you have your one date of this week, and then the very next day or a day, 2 days from now, so you had a date last night, and then maybe this evening she reaches out and says, yesterday was wonderful. It was amazing. It was one of the best dates I've ever had or whatever. Then you just say, me too. I'd love to see you again. What's your schedule like? Well, I'm available Friday night. It's like, great. Let's get together Friday. I'll pick you up at 7 or whatever. Wear something casual. We're going to do something a little sporty outside. Maybe you're going to take her to Top Flight Golf or something like that. Something that's physical and fun. And then so now you're going to end up seeing her 2 times. And she was the one that initiated contact, just to tell you that she had a good time in the previous date. But as the book teaches, you're just going to assume the real reason she's reaching out is because she wants to see you again. But again, women don't ask you out. They'll just get in contact and hope that you want to see them. So they're trying to make it easy for you to see them again and more often. And so you should be able to pick up on that and recognize, oh, she's reaching out because she wants to see me. And so when that starts happening, if she's reaching out 2 or 3 times a week after week 2 or 3, then at that point, there's no reason for you to reach out because you're going to be talking to her every couple of days. And therefore, since she's reaching out to you and you're making dates, it's her idea. That you don't have to worry about going too fast or over pursuing or calling or texting too much. So it's a pretty simple process. So it is true that it's our job to pursue in the beginning, but it's really just to kind of get the snowball rolling down the hill, and then the momentum kind of carries it, and then you can just back off and wait to hear from her. And by the time you get 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks in, she's going to be in contact with you usually just about every day and sometimes multiple times a day. And if you're hearing from a girl constantly, you don't even have to go out on an official date. If she's reaching out, she's like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, or it's like, say, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Hey, how are you? Just say, come over. You don't have to take her out on an official date. What is a date? As the book says, it's an opportunity for sex to happen. That's it. It could be an official date. It could mean going out. It could mean her coming over and make dinner together. It could mean just her coming over late at night for a booty call. Once you guys are already dating and going out, if you took her out on a nice date Friday night and she stayed over Friday and you hung out all Saturday and then she left Sunday morning, and now it's Tuesday and she's reaching out going, hey, maybe it's 9 o'clock at night. I would just say, come over. Then you can hang out, have fun, hook up. You both get up. She goes her way Wednesday morning. You go your way Wednesday morning. And then maybe Thursday, she reaches out again. You assume she wants to see you and say, what's your schedule like this weekend? Oh, I'm wide open. Or Friday night, I'm available. And say, let's get together Friday. Make a date. That's how it works. That's the process. So you're just trying to go slightly slower than she is. And so he says, here's the quote. And he says this from the book. Again, I haven't proofed it. Maybe you guys can fact check me in the comments, but I assume this is what the book says off the top of my head. He says, just remember, in the first 60 days, you want to stay off the phone even if she is calling you. When she calls you, take the opportunity to make another date with her. So what that is talking about is this is where a lot of guys go wrong. They're like, oh, she's calling me, and so let me just sit on the phone for 2 hours and chit-chat. And so what ends up happening is you tell her everything that's going on in your week. Anybody that's in sales knows this instinctively because it's part of your training, and that's why people that have a background in sales do really well with my book, because it lines up with the prospecting techniques they're taught in sales. And so instead of chit-chatting on the phone, recognize that she's reaching out probably because she wants to see you again. So make the date and get off the phone. Because if you start to spend more and more time as the weeks go by chit-chatting on the phone, and then you're like, I must go out once per week, what you'll notice is that you're talking every day, an hour or two, and then when you try to set a date for the weekend, she's telling you how busy she is. And so what ends up happening, a lot of guys do well out of the gate, and then they're chit-chatting constantly on the phone, or they're texting all throughout the day, and then all of a sudden the woman stops texting, and then the guy freaks out and then really starts chasing and pursuing. So it's better if you just use the phone for setting dates and not trying to get to know somebody. So that's why the book is written this way because this is what most guys do. They think, oh, she's reaching out to me. She must want to talk to me. And so they sit on the phone for 2 hours trying to get her to like them more, when in reality, you recognize she's reaching out. She probably wants to see me. Let's make a date, and then get off the phone, and I get back to what I was doing before she called. That's why it's worded that way. He says, and so the quote from the book continues on, try to keep it to just 1 day a week unless she starts saying, I can't wait, I want to see you tonight, I want you to come over. However, if you see her too much too soon, she will back off. Then you need to do the same. If she doesn't start calling you, no matter how many times she calls, you need to stick to the once a week rule. If she called on Wednesday, don't call her until Monday or Tuesday of the following week to ask her out. If she doesn't seem as enthusiastic to see you, it's probably because her interest level is dropping. If she doesn't accept your plans for a date, wait another week to ask her out. I'm thinking you might be reading an old copy of the book. You might be reading the original one from 2006. It's not been updated. So you should be reading the second edition, which is like this. And we can open the second edition to the copyright page. And it's what you'll notice is it says 2013, 2016. So what that means is this was totally edited in 2013 personally by me as a second edition. And then when I was recording the audiobook in 2016 in the studio, I added a lot more content. And then Jennifer went through, and everything I added in the audiobook was added to the Kindle, the paperback, and the hardcover version. So just the fact that you're talking about interest level is dropping, that sounds like it was probably the first edition of the book and not the second edition. So you need to check that. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure that you actually pulled this from the right edition. So you're literally, reading an edition from 20 years ago, which almost 20 years ago, which was when my first edition of the book. It was pretty much exclusively written by the ghostwriter. So you need to check on that. But again, the idea is just like what I was talking about, is 1 date per week, 1 phone call per week. But if she's reaching out to you, then you assume she wants to see you and you make the next date. You're usually not going to get rejected. A lot of times where guys make the mistake, it's not necessarily a mistake, but say you go out on 1 date the first week, you don't hear from her, and then the second week you have a second date, and then after the second date or during the second date you hook up, and then she starts calling you just about every day, and say you invite her over and she comes over, another booty call. If she comes over 2 or 3 days in a row, you should expect a pullback. You should expect her enthusiasm to drop a little bit. And then what tends to trip guys up is they're thinking, man, we just saw each other 4 days in a row this week, and now I haven't heard from her in 2 or 3 days. And then they start freaking out, and then they start calling and texting. And now what happens, it went from her pursuing to now they're pursuing, trying to force things along, and then they get into a situation where now she's hard to get out on a date again. And so the fallback position is always the once per week rule. So say, after you had your second date, that next week that you had your second date, she comes over for the next 3-4 nights in a row, and she's texting you multiple times a day throughout the day. And then all of a sudden, after the 4th time that you saw her this week, you notice when she leaves that night or maybe the next morning, almost like she's a little less interested, less enthusiastic, maybe even like she seems kind of bored, if you will. And all it means is that women are like cats. They spend a lot of time around you. They get really familiar. Then they want to go be present with their feelings, and that's why you let her be. And so in that case, when she disappears, when you had been talking and seeing each other every day for 3 or 4 days, and now all of a sudden 3 days have gone by, you don't freak out and start calling her again and go, what's wrong? I haven't heard from you. You seem upset with me. We need to get together. I got to confront her, coach. It just means you back off and you let her be. And the fallback is once a week. So if you haven't heard from her in 3 or 4 days, I wouldn't do anything, because you're trying to stretch it out because you want her to get to the point where she's not sure of herself. Because it's a scientific fact that women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear. And so if she backs off like that and your fallback is once a week, I would wait a full 7 days, maybe 8 days, just because you're trying to leave enough space in there for her to start wondering and going, is he mad at me? Does he not like me anymore? Did he meet somebody else? Did I have bad breath? Did he get back together with his ex? What's going on? Did he get hit by a bus? And then she reaches out. So you're trying to stretch it out. But if 7-8 days go by and you haven't heard from her, then you reach back out and try to set the next date. Because when you first meet somebody, you don't know, especially you guys that exclusively like to lean on online dating. A lot of women, as soon as they have a breakup, they go right to online dating, and then they start hanging out, having fun, and hook up with new guys. And then usually the ex comes back in the picture, and so things are progressing for several weeks, and you spend a lot of time together, and then all of a sudden she stops pursuing, and she goes cold, and then when you do reach out, she's unavailable or tells you how busy she is. Usually when that happens, you should assume probably some other dude that from their past, or an ex, or Chad Thundercock, who she really liked and she was dating, and then he blew her off, and she was kind of heartbroken over it, and that's when you first met her, and then a few weeks go by, then Chad Thundercock comes back in the picture. Because she's emotionally bonded to Chad Thundercock, she's going to blow you off and go hang out with Chad. And so you're going to make your effort, and you're going to match and mirror her actions based upon how she's showing up and her level of effort. And again, it just goes back to once per week. And then if it gets to the point where you wait 7-8 days, you call her up, try to make another date, and then she's telling you how busy she is and she can't make it, or she's unsure of her schedule, the bottom line is she's not making herself available to you when before you saw her 4 times in 1 week. So you probably in that case should assume there's another dude. And just let it be. Well, call me when you figure out your schedule. And then I would wait to hear, and she says, I will. Then I wouldn't call her or text her again for any reason, because you're going to make it easy for her to follow through on her plans and commitments, or to flake out and disappear from your life forever. So that's the intent with this. It's to create the conditions where she's unsure of where she stands, so she makes more of an effort to chase and pursue you. That is the logic behind this. And again, I would check the edition of your book and make sure you're reading one from 2013, because that was the second edition. And again, it has 2 dates in the book, 2013 and 2016. What that means is the second edition was published in 2013 and was updated once again in 2016 after I recorded in the studio the second edition and added a bunch of content. As I was reading it, things came to mind and I put it in there. And when that was finished, Jennifer went through and updated all the copies of the book. So what's in the book exactly matches the audiobook that was published in 2016. So that's why those numbers are in there. And again, if you're on my website and you're subscribed to the free email newsletter in the members area, it has the latest edition of the book there. So you can go and double check that just to make sure. And all the links that are on my website of where you can purchase the book, again, those links go to the latest edition of 3% Man. So if you guys haven't already signed up for our exclusive members only content, if you're watching this video on YouTube, in the video description there are links so you can join members only content on YouTube. You can join on my website, or you can join at Spotify. And so what you get with the members only is you get 6 additional video coaching newsletters like this one that are exclusive for the paying members only. We also have a weekly 3% Man study group and a weekly Mastering Yourself study group where myself, the guys and girls, we go through each book page by page in a study group format, and we discuss everything that's in the book in depth, in detail, to give you another teaching and learning aid to really help you master the concepts that are in the book. Plus, we get everything from the girls' perspective because they've also read the books and are learning the information as well. Plus, we have the full viewers questions podcast where we answer the viewers questions that are sent in, the short viewers questions, usually through an Instagram story we do a couple times a year. Every time we do, we get like 300-400 questions, so we don't do them very often when people can submit them, but every week we're answering typically 12 to 15 of those viewer questions podcasts, and any other special interviews, things of that nature that are members only, you get access to that. And if you subscribe to members only on my website, if you go to the understandingrelationships.com and click the plans tab and you choose an annual plan and pay up front after the 7-day free trial, you get a 25% discount. Plus, in addition, if you sign up on the website, you get all of the email analysis that goes with these video coaching newsletters. But again, if you would rather just watch the videos, you can subscribe on YouTube or you can subscribe on Spotify. And again, the links are below this video in the video description to subscribe on the platform of your choice. And if you got a question or a challenge and you would like to get my help, go to understandingrelationships.com, click the products tab at the top of your screen on any page of my website, and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, I will talk to you soon.